can see U.S. President Trump actually right there. He has arrived at the DMZ and he's expected to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as well as take a tour around the demilitarized zone with North Korean officials. Now, for our viewers who may not be so familiar with what the DMZ is, it is an unarmed buffer zone that stretches about 2 kilometers north and 2 kilometers south from the military demarcation line. So at the very middle of the DMZ, the military demarcation line is drawn up and the line is guarded 24/7 by the South and North Korean soldiers at the, of course, famous joint security area, also called the Panmunjom.
So right now we're seeing U.S. President Donald Trump and South Korean President Moon, who says has been invited to come along to the come along to the demilitarized zone. They're both standing at a post, standing at the observation post Olet. They are being briefed by U.S. soldiers, and from what we see, it seems like they're looking over the border to the north, facing North Korea.
Now we're just minutes away from witnessing history. The two leaders of South Korea and the U.S. will meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un upon U.S. President's invitation. Now, Dr. Ko, how did you see the South Korea-U.S. Summit as well as the joint press briefing that followed?
Well, it was pretty much it went as expected in many ways. I mean, we expected President Trump to come to Seoul, have a meeting with President Moon, and essentially repeat over that what President Trump has been saying all this time, ever since this negotiation process with North Korea has started back in Singapore last year, which is essentially that despite the major progress being made on the denuclearization front, Trump himself has brought to the Korean Peninsula stability and some sort of certainty, some sort of process, meaning even though it's not really, right now the negotiation between Pyongyang and Washington is at an impasse, the two sides are trying to get in touch and remain engaged in dialogue, as we can see today. I mean, despite the recent impasse, I mean, the two leaders are trying to meet again, at least for a brief time, and somehow create a moment to continue with the dialogue. So in that sense, I think President Trump has been reiterating his achievements so far, which are stability and certainty.
Now, we all apologize for the poor video quality of the DMZ there. We do want to remind you that we are getting live feeds from one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world. So, Tony, could you give us a recap of how this DMZ meeting was materialized?
Right. So when President Trump was leaving for Osaka on Wednesday, he said he will be meeting with a lot of people, but not him, referring to Kim Jong-un, but he said that he could be communicating with Kim Jong-un in a different forum, and that actually took place yesterday on Saturday morning when he tweeted that, if he will be coming to South Korea, and when he's here, he'll be happy to meet with Chairman Kim at the border just to shake hands and say hello. So after that, North Korea's first Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee sent a reply saying that it's a very interesting proposal, and added that it'll be a meaningful step in terms of deepening the friendship between the leaders of Pyongyang and Washington. So after that, we really don't know how that communication between North Korea and the U.S. took place. But what we think was that communication did take place indeed between working level officials, like, for example, Stephen Biegun and Choi Sun-hee, the North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister. Were receiving reports that they did meet yesterday while the summit was taking place between President Trump and President Moon Jae-in. So, and we're also here, we've also seen reports that the working level officials of Pyongyang and Washington spoke with each other over the hotline that's established between the UN command and the North Korean military. So we are expecting that some sort of coordination took place on Saturday, and that's why President Trump just said this morning that final stages, the U.S. is in the final stages of setting the details with the North over this surprise meeting. So now on the screen, what we are seeing is U.S. President Donald Trump and South Korean President Moon being briefed by U.S. soldiers about the post where they are. Where they are right now is the observation post Olet within Camp Boniface, which is a UN command military post located 400 meters south of the demilitarized zone. So we're not really sure where U.S. President Donald Trump will be meeting with, shaking his hand with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. But reports say that he could be moving from this Camp Boniface, from this post Olet, to the truce village of Panmunjom, to the joint security area by a military vehicle, and he could be shaking hands with Kim Jong-un right there, just as the picture we saw last year in April when President Moon Jae-in met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for the first time.
Now, Dr. Go, how do you see the materialization of this huge surprise meeting among the three leaders? As you know, as we all know, Mr. Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, well, they don't act unless they gain something from it.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts on the materialization of this huge historical meeting?
In a nutshell, I would say that this is a major gift, essential concession from North Korea to President Trump. I think everybody is well aware that the President Trump is not going to lift the sanctions anytime soon. He essentially made a remark in that direction already this morning in the joint press conference with President Moon at the Blue House, saying that he's not in a rush to lift the sanctions. And the problem is with the sanctions is one of the conditions that North Koreans expected or demanding the Americans to do before they return to the dialogue. So the fact is that even though the United States hasn't changed its position towards the sanctions, and then Kim Jong-un is making this gesture to come to the Panmunjom and joint security area and have this brief meeting with President Trump, it's a major gesture towards Washington and President Trump. Essentially, Kim Jong-un is reaffirming that what really drives the dialogue in the Korean Peninsula is actually the personal diplomacy, personal relations between the two leaders, rather than any diplomatic structure that the two countries are trying to build right now. So in that sense, this reaffirmation of the personal bond is going to be something that the North Korea expects to use as a leverage to change this hardline attitude displayed by the administration officials in Washington that the United States should get from North Korea total denuclearization deal before there's any lifting of the sanctions. So in that sense, I think this is like a major gesture on the part of North Korea because they are going beyond the pre-existing conditions to restart the dialogue.
Now, Chong-hee, we first saw the possibility of an encounter between the U.S. president and North Korean leader through Mr. Trump's tweet. He impromptu, if you will. He gave an impromptu invitation to Kim Jong-un that he would just like to shake hands with him and say hello, even if it's just for 2 seconds. But some raised the possibility of this meeting being pre-arranged. What do you say to that?
Well, that's right. What we saw, the recent report we saw from U.S. Political newspaper The Hill was that it had an interview with U.S. President Donald Trump, and there Trump said DMZ is, of course, one of the places he'll visit when he's in South Korea. And he was asked whether he'll be willing to meet with Kim Jong-un if Kim Jong-un indeed proposes to meet, and Trump said yes. But because of the security reasons, The Hill could not report about this, and this was kept as a secret until now. And after that, we saw U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, arrive in South Korea a couple of days before U.S. President Donald Trump would come. And this also raised speculation that Biegun could be here to sort of, coordinate with the North Korean officials about this possible encounter. But we're not really sure about that factor. But what we are reading from the U.S. media outlets is that there have been widespread rumors in Seoul and Washington that Trump could be, creating an opportune moment to meet with Kim Jong-un on the sidelines of his visit to South Korea for the summit with President Moon. But we are really not sure if this was a completely impromptu meeting or if this was, at least a little bit planned beforehand. We're not sure about that, but we did receive some reports like that, hinting that there could have been a little bit of consideration beforehand about this surprise encounter.
A lot of speculations are rising regarding this historic encounter that is supposed to happen in the coming minutes. Now, Dr. Ko, where in the DMZ do you think the three leaders will meet? And do you think it'll be just a few seconds long, a quick handshake and a hello? Or do you think the three or the two, President Trump and North Korean leader, will actually sit down for summit talks?
Well, I think it'll be difficult to envisage where they're going to have an actual meeting, especially if it's a three-way meeting between President Trump, President Moon, and Chairman Kim. But then we can, get some idea from previous meetings between North Korean leader and the South Korean leader, especially the one that took place last year in Panmunjom, the first summit between the two. And in that case, as most of the meeting took place on the southern side of the DMZ, on the South Korean side, and at the House of the Peace. And also, most famously, the two leaders actually took a walk together, and they walk across this pedestrian bridge, and they had this solo meeting just between the two leaders for half an hour discussing the sensitive matters of denuclearization. So I think that's something that the President Trump might use as a template. So the speculation that, the expectation that, the three leaders might just have a handshake and then turn their back and come home, I think that's a little bit difficult to envisage because, after all, that'll be awkward, first of all. So I think they'll try to maximize whatever time they have together, and they try to get across some sort of message, some sort of assurance that the negotiation should go forward.
This historic encounter between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, as well as South Korean President Moon Jae-in, are making global headlines as we speak. And now we can see on the screen, we're getting live feeds from the demilitarized zone. We can see President Trump and President Moon Jae-in having a conversation at the OLED observation post, from which we can overlook the North Korean side, get a view of North Korea. Now, Chung-hee, I want to go back to you. Could you tell us a bit more about North Korea's first Vice Foreign Minister, Choi Sun-hee? She was actually the first person to respond to Mr. Trump's tweet yesterday.
That's right. She is regarded as a figure who serves as a mouthpiece of North Korean regime. She's a very big figure in terms of North Korean diplomacy. Well, from years ago, she's been involved in North Korea's negotiations with the U.S. But what we have to remember is that after the Hanoi summit breakdown, Choi Sun-hee, the North's Vice Foreign Minister, and Ri Yong-ho, the North's Foreign Minister, they too abruptly held a press conference in Hanoi, saying, explaining the reasons why the deal couldn't be made between the two sides, and claiming that what the North actually asked for was a partial lifting of sanctions, but the U.S. just wasn't, willing to accept the North's proposal. And after that, Choi Sun-hee has been very active in terms of expressing the North's stances regarding the nuclear negotiations with the U.S. She is a very key figure. She is a figure who's been deeply involved in nuclear negotiations with the U.S. But in March, we have to note the fact that she was elected the deputy of the North's parliament called Supreme People's Assembly, and she also became one of the member of the North's top decision-making body called State Affairs Commission. So she is definitely positioning herself as one of the core figures near North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And plus, she also rose to become the first vice foreign minister within North Korea, which means the #2 position in the North's diplomatic arena. So yeah, we definitely will have to pay attention to her. And she is also the direct counterpart for a U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Stephen Biegun.
Now, Chung-hee, as you know, things have been stalled. Things have been stuck in limbo for months now since the collapse of the Hanoi summit. But it seems like we are seeing a recent turnaround in the atmosphere surrounding the Korean peninsula. We've seen the summit